Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Daddy, wake up. Those three tiny, trembling words shattered the silence of the hospital room like a thunderclap. For weeks, the rhythmic beeping of the monitors had been the only sound that filled the space, a haunting symphony of hope and despair intertwined. But now, that fragile, innocent voice pierced through the stillness, echoing with a power no doctor, machine, or medicine could match. It belonged to a little girl with big, tear-filled eyes, the daughter Noah Newman shared with Audra Charles, a child who had been kept in the shadows for far too long. And in that exact moment, everything changed. Noah's fingers twitched. His eyelids fluttered. The faintest gasp escaped his lips. Sharon, who had been reading softly from a worn children's book by his bedside, froze mid-sentence. Nick dropped the cup of coffee he'd been clutching. Even the nurse stationed outside the room peeked in, startled by the sudden flurry of motion. But all eyes were on that little girl, who stood on tiptoe by the bed, her small hand clutching her father's. "Daddy, it's me, please wake up," she whispered again, her voice quivering but full of desperate love. And then, to everyone's disbelief, Noah opened his eyes. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Noah's lashes blinked rapidly as though adjusting to the blinding fluorescent light above him. His chest rose and fell with uneven breaths, each one more alive than the last. The machines began to beep erratically, not in warning, but in triumph. Sharon let out a strangled sob, her hand flying to her mouth. Nick reached instinctively for his ex-wife, steadying her as she nearly collapsed in shock and joy. "Noah?" Sharon choked out, barely believing what she was seeing. But her son's gaze, groggy and disoriented, wasn't on her. It was on the little girl beside him, the same one who had unknowingly become the miracle he needed to return to the living. His cracked lips parted, his voice hoarse, barely audible. "Are you my daughter?" The child nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Mommy said you were sleeping because you were tired from painting the sky," she said innocently. Audra, who had been frozen in the doorway this entire time, stepped forward, her face a storm of relief and guilt. She had kept this secret for years, hiding Noah's daughter from the Newmans, protecting her from the chaos of their world. But now, under the harsh fluorescent glow of truth, there was no more running, no more pretending. Sharon's heart pounded in her chest as she turned toward Audra, the woman who had caused so much pain in Noah's life, and now, miraculously, had given him a reason to live again. "You kept this from us?" Sharon's voice cracked with emotion. "You let my son lie here in that bed for weeks while you hid his little girl?" Audra's lip trembled. "Sharon, I never wanted this," she whispered. "When Noah and I broke apart, I thought it was the only way to protect her, to protect him. He didn't know, he never knew she existed." The confession hit Nick like a punch. His fists clenched as he tried to process the truth. "You mean to tell me," he growled, "that this whole time, while we've been sitting here praying for a miracle, our granddaughter has been out there without her father?" Audra's eyes brimmed with tears. "Yes," she breathed. "But she's the reason he woke up. You can hate me all you want, Nick, but that child just brought him back." The tension in the room was suffocating. Sharon's tears turned into silent sobs as she looked at her son, who was now struggling to lift his hand toward the child. His body trembled from weakness, but the strength of a father's love guided him. The girl reached up eagerly, her tiny fingers wrapping around his. "I knew you'd wake up, Daddy," she whispered, smiling through her tears. "I told Mommy that love makes everything better." Noah's lips curved into the faintest smile, his first in months. It wasn't the smile of the man he once was, but the fragile expression of someone rediscovering life. You're real," he murmured, his voice breaking. I dreamed about you." Sharon brushed the tears from her cheeks, overcome by emotion. "She's your miracle, Noah," she whispered softly. "You came back because of her." But while Sharon saw hope, Nick saw fury. His protective instincts as a father kicked in, his eyes narrowing at Audra. "You had no right," he hissed. You kept this from us, from him. You played God with our family. Audra shook her head, desperate. I made mistakes, Nick, but I never stopped loving him. And I swear, I wasn't trying to destroy you. I was trying to keep my daughter safe. Safe from what? Sharon demanded. From love? From her family? Audra took a shaky breath. From the truth, she admitted. From everything that comes with being a Newman. The words cut deep, because in a way, Sharon knew she wasn't wrong. The Newmans loved fiercely, but they also destroyed everything they touched, especially when it came to love and loyalty. But still, keeping a child secret? That crossed a line Sharon could never forgive. As Noah's awareness returned in waves, bits and pieces of his memory began to surface, the last moments before his accident, the argument with Audra, the heartbreak that drove him to speed off into the night. I remember, he whispered weakly, his brow furrowing. We fought, about her. Audra nodded tearfully. You wanted to tell your parents, she confessed. You said she deserved to know where she came from. I panicked. I told you not to. We screamed, and you left. Sharon's hand flew to her heart as the puzzle pieces locked into place. That's why you were on the road that night, she murmured. Nick's jaw tightened, anger replaced by guilt. He crashed because he was trying to do the right thing, he said bitterly. And all this time, we blamed the accident on fate. Noah's eyes filled with tears as he turned to look at Audra. You hid her from me, he said softly, the pain in his voice more cutting than any accusation. You took away years I can never get back. Audra sobbed. I know. And I'll never forgive myself for that. But you're here now, Noah. You can still be her father. The nurse quietly slipped into the room, her voice gentle but urgent. We need to check his vitals, she said, her eyes wide with awe. This shouldn't even be possible. Sharon nodded numbly, stepping back as the medical team rushed in, but her gaze never left her son. He was awake. He was alive. And somehow, the impossible had happened, all because of a child's love. As the doctors checked Noah's reflexes and ran tests, Sharon watched the little girl cling to her father's hand as if she'd never let go again. You're my hero, she whispered. Noah smiled faintly, his voice barely a rasp. No, sweetheart, he said, his eyes glistening. You're mine. Outside the room, Nick stormed into the corridor, his anger boiling over. He needed air, space, anything to stop the roaring in his ears. Audra followed him, her heels clicking against the tile. Nick, please, don't, he snapped. You don't get to explain. You took my son's child from him. From us. I know, Audra cried. But if you'll just let me, no, Nick barked. You lied, Audra. You lied about everything. You let Sharon sit by that bed, praying, begging, while the answer to our prayers was standing right in front of us. His words echoed down the hallway, sharp and furious. But before Audra could respond, the sound of Sharon's voice called out behind them, shaky, emotional, but filled with gratitude. Nick, she said, her eyes red from crying. Don't do this. Not now. Our son just woke up. Whatever else we have to face, we face it later. For now, let's just be thankful. Back inside the room, Noah was fully conscious now, though weak and exhausted. His gaze drifted between the faces of the people he loved most, his mother, his father, and the woman who betrayed him but also gave him the greatest gift of all. And then there was her, his little girl. The way she smiled at him, the way her small fingers brushed his cheek, it was like looking at hope in its purest form. What's your name? He asked gently, realizing he'd never been told. Luna, she said shyly. Mommy said you liked the moon. Noah's heart clenched. I do, he whispered, his voice breaking again. I always have. He reached out and brushed a tear from her cheek. You're beautiful, Luna. Just like your mom. Audra looked away, her eyes full of remorse. Sharon couldn't help but cry again, watching the tenderness in her son's face. For the first time in a long time, she saw light returning to him, a light she feared had been lost forever. As night fell over Genoa City, the Newman family gathered in the dimly lit hospital room, united in a fragile moment of peace. Faith and Mariah arrived, gasping in disbelief when they saw Noah awake. "Oh my God, Noah!" Mariah cried, rushing to his side. "You scared us all half to death." Noah chuckled weakly, his hand squeezing hers. "Guess I needed a dramatic entrance," he murmured. Faith laughed through tears, hugging her mother tightly. "He really woke up," she whispered. "I told you, Mom. I told you miracles happen." Sharon smiled faintly, brushing Faith's hair back. "Yes, sweetheart. They do." But not everyone felt the same relief. Outside the room, Audra stood alone by the window, watching the city lights blur through her tears. She knew this was only the beginning. The truth about Luna's existence would shake Genoa City to its core, especially once Victor Newman found out. The patriarch's wrath would be merciless. Audra had lied to his family, hidden his great-grandchild, and manipulated Noah's life for years. But as she looked at the scene inside the room, Noah holding Luna's hand, Sharon whispering a prayer of thanks, Audra knew she couldn't undo the past. All she could do now was stand in the wreckage and hope for forgiveness that might never come. In the hours that followed, word of Noah's awakening spread like wildfire through the hospital. Doctors called it a medical anomaly, but everyone else called it what it truly was, a miracle. The moment Sharon heard her granddaughter's voice say, "Daddy, wake up," she knew something divine had intervened. For weeks, she'd been clinging to hope, talking to her son as if he could hear her, telling him that his family needed him, that she needed him. And maybe he had heard. Maybe somewhere in that deep, unreachable place between life and death, Noah had been fighting his way back. But it wasn't Sharon's voice, or Nick's prayers, or the machines that kept him alive. It was the sound of innocence, the pure, unfiltered love of a child calling her father home. When morning came, Noah slept peacefully for the first time in weeks, not in a coma, but in true rest. Sharon sat beside him, her hand on his arm, while Luna curled up in a chair, fast asleep. Nick stood silently by the window, watching the sunrise. And though his anger toward Audra still burned, he couldn't deny one simple truth: her secret, as cruel as it was, had brought their son back. Sometimes, even the darkest lies lead to the brightest light. As Sharon looked over at her son and granddaughter, she whispered a quiet thank you to whatever force had made the impossible possible. "Welcome back, my boy," she said softly, her voice trembling with emotion. "You came back to us, because love called you home." Morning sunlight streamed through the hospital window, bathing the room in a soft, golden hue. It was a new day in Genoa City, one that no one in the Newman family would ever forget. Sharon sat quietly beside Noah's bed, her hand protectively resting over his. He looked stronger now, color slowly returning to his face, though his body still bore the marks of the battle he had fought between life and death. On the couch nearby, little Luna stirred awake, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "Mommy," she murmured groggily, her gaze searching the room until it landed on her father. When she saw Noah smiling faintly at her, she jumped up with joy. "You're still awake," she exclaimed, her voice a melody of innocence and excitement. Noah chuckled softly, reaching out to ruffle her hair. "I'm not going anywhere this time," he whispered. "Promise." For a fleeting moment, it felt like peace had returned. Sharon's tears had dried, Nick's anger had cooled into silent contemplation, and even Audra, standing quietly by the doorway, seemed to believe that maybe, just maybe, everything could somehow be made right. But peace in Genoa City never lasted long. Because while Sharon was praying with gratitude and Noah was bonding with his daughter, elsewhere, another Newman was about to receive the most earth-shattering news of his life. At Newman Towers, Victor Newman stood in his office, reviewing quarterly reports, unaware that his world was about to tilt off its axis. When Nikki entered, her eyes red from crying, he immediately looked up. "What is it?" Victor demanded, his deep voice laced with concern. "Is it Noah? Did something happen?" Nikki took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. yes, something happened, she said softly. Noah woke up. For a brief second, Victor's tough exterior cracked, replaced by visible relief. Thank God, he murmured, lowering his head in prayer. But Nikki didn't smile. There's more, she continued hesitantly. Something unexpected. Victor's brow furrowed. What do you mean, more? Nikki hesitated, unsure how to even form the words. There's a little girl, she whispered. She called him Daddy before he woke up. Victor stared at her, unblinking. A little girl, he repeated slowly. What are you saying, Nikki? Nikki took another breath. Her name is Luna. She's Noah's daughter, with Audra Charles. For several long seconds, the only sound in the office was the ticking of the antique clock on Victor's wall. Then, the silence shattered with the low, controlled growl of the man known as the Mustache. What the hell did you just say? His voice was soft, but lethal. Audra Charles has my great-grandchild? Nikki nodded carefully, bracing for the explosion she knew was coming. She kept it secret for years, Victor. No one knew. Not Sharon, not Nick, not even Noah himself. Victor's eyes darkened with fury. He slammed his fist onto the desk, sending papers flying. That conniving woman, he thundered. That snake slithered her way into my family, used my grandson, and then hid a Newman heir from me? His rage filled the entire office like a storm cloud. This is an outrage. She's been playing us for fools all along. Victor, please, Nikki pleaded, stepping closer. Don't make this worse. Noah just woke up. Sharon's fragile, and the little girl. The little girl, Victor interrupted, is a Newman. My blood. And she's been hidden from her family like some shameful secret. I will not stand for this, Nikki. He turned, his jaw tight with determination. Where are they? At Memorial, Nikki replied nervously. Sharon's with them. Without another word, Victor grabbed his coat and stormed out of the office, leaving Nikki calling after him. Victor! Don't do anything rash. But Victor Newman was already gone, a force of nature unleashed. Back at the hospital, the mood was fragile but hopeful. Sharon was helping Luna color in a notebook while Noah sipped water for the first time since waking up. Audra lingered by the window, staring out at the city skyline, guilt gnawing at her with every passing second. She knew Victor would find out soon. The thought alone made her stomach twist in knots. She had seen the man's wrath before, but this time, she had crossed an unforgivable line. Noah's voice broke through her thoughts. You okay? He asked weakly. Audra turned, startled that he was even talking to her with kindness after everything. I should be asking you that, she said quietly. You've been through so much. He smiled faintly, though his eyes were pained. I think we both have, he said. But I need to understand, Audra. Why? Why didn't you tell me about her? Tears welled in her eyes. Because I was scared, she whispered. I thought if I told you, you'd go straight to your family. I didn't want Luna growing up in that world of power struggles and judgment. I wanted her to have a normal life. But I was wrong. She deserved her father. Before Noah could respond, the sound of footsteps thundered down the hall. Sharon looked up, sensing trouble even before the door burst open. Standing in the doorway like a dark storm was Victor Newman himself. The entire room froze. Where is she? Victor barked. His voice boomed with authority, filling every corner of the room. Sharon rose from her chair, her heart racing. Victor, please, she said softly. Noah just woke up. Keep your voice down. But Victor wasn't listening. His eyes locked on Audra, who stood frozen in place like prey before a predator. You, he growled. You lying, manipulative witch. Mr. Newman, Audra began, but Victor cut her off with a glare that could pierce steel. Don't you dare speak my name, he hissed. You hid my great-grandchild from this family. You kept her existence a secret while my grandson lay in a coma. You will answer for this. Audra backed away, tears streaming down her face. I know I made mistakes, she stammered. But please, she's just a child. Don't take your anger out on her. Victor's eyes softened only slightly as he looked toward Luna, who was clutching Sharon's hand in confusion and fear. She's a Newman, he said, his tone gentler now. She deserves to know who she is. Noah, still weak, tried to speak. Grandpa, stop. His voice cracked, but his conviction was strong. This isn't about you or your legacy. This is about her. About us. Victor turned to face him, pride and fury warring within him. You don't understand, boy, he said. She's my blood. She belongs with this family. No, Noah replied, his voice firmer now. She belongs with me. And you're not going to turn her into another pawn in your corporate games. The words stunned the room. Sharon gasped softly, Nick, who had just arrived, froze at the door, and Audra's eyes widened in disbelief. Victor looked at his grandson, weak but defiant, and saw a reflection of himself in his youth. You think you can defy me? Victor asked coldly. Noah met his gaze. I'm not defying you, Grandpa. I'm protecting my daughter. The same way you've always protected your family. The silence that followed was electric. For a brief moment, something flickered in Victor's eyes, respect, perhaps, or even understanding. But it quickly hardened again. You have your father's stubbornness, he muttered, glancing toward Nick. And your mother's heart. A dangerous combination.